There is a kind of moment that does not announce itself. It does not arrive with fear, noise, or urgency. It feels ordinary, almost invisible. And that is precisely why it matters. Scripture pauses here not to explain, but to allow something fragile to exist for a breath longer. Before wrongdoing had meaning, before obedience felt heavy, before choice carried consequence, there was a quiet state of being that could be lost without resistance. Adam does not wake up expecting change. Nothing in his world suggests instability. The ground holds him. The air feels familiar. Presence is constant, unquestioned, uninterrupted. He does not evaluate his life because there has never been a reason to. Belonging is not something he protects. It is something he assumes. And assumptions, when left unexamined, are often the most vulnerable things we carry. What makes this moment so difficult to recognize is that it feels complete. There is no hunger pushing him forward, no fear pulling him back. Silence here is not emptiness, it is fullness without awareness. The story lingers in this calm because once awareness enters, something subtle will already be gone. Not suddenly, not violently, but quietly enough that Adam himself will not know when it happened. This is not yet a story about failure. It is a story about untested freedom, about trust that has never been challenged, about a relationship so steady it feels permanent. And permanence, when never questioned, can slip past gratitude and drift into neglect without intention. Scripture does not accuse Adam here. It simply shows him standing in a moment that cannot last forever, even though nothing tells him that yet. These stories are created for those who are willing to slow down, to notice what Scripture does not shout. They are for people who choose depth over speed, reflection over reaction. If you feel drawn to this kind of unhurried storytelling, you are welcome to subscribe, not out of routine, but as a deliberate choice to walk with stories that unfold slowly and ask quietly. As the story opens, there is no warning, no command echoing yet. Only a world that feels settled, a man who feels secure, and a silence that holds more weight than anyone realizes. Stand here for a moment. Let the stillness stretch, because the next movement will change how this silence is remembered forever. When everything still felt secure, nothing in the environment suggests that a fracture is approaching. The world feels settled, balanced, complete, in a way that does not demand explanation. Days move without urgency. There is rhythm but no pressure. Work exists, but it is not heavy. Rest exists, but it is not earned. Everything fits together so naturally that the idea of disruption would feel foreign, almost unnecessary. Adam moves through this space without suspicion. He names what is placed before him, not as an act of control, but as participation. The world responds, not with resistance, but with harmony. There is no fear of losing what surrounds him, because loss has never entered his imagination. When something has always been present, the mind stops checking whether it might disappear. There's also no sense of isolation. Not because Adam understands connection in abstract terms, but because separation has never been experienced. Presence is steady, guidance is near, silence is familiar, not threatening. Even when nothing is spoken, nothing feels missing. The absence of questions does not feel like ignorance. It feels like peace. What is striking about this moment is not perfection, but normality. Nothing feels dramatic enough to remember later. This is the kind of stability people rarely notice until it is gone. The kind that fades not because it was weak, but because it was assumed. Adam does not guard this life. He does not analyze it. He simply lives inside it, unaware that stability itself can be fragile when left unquestioned. There is no tension yet, only the faint outline of it, so faint it cannot be named. The world feels safe enough to stop paying attention. And it is here, inside this calm routine, that the conditions for change quietly assemble. Nothing feels dangerous. Nothing feels urgent. And yet, beneath the surface of normality, something waits, not as a threat, but as a possibility. The choice that began in silence. The moment does not arrive with force. It arrives softly, almost politely. Nothing in the air changes. Nothing collapses. There is no hand pushing Adam forward, no voice commanding him to move faster than he is ready. What appears instead is space. Space to consider, space to choose, space where silence becomes active rather than empty. For the first time, Adam is not simply receiving the world, he is standing inside a question. Not one spoken aloud, but one felt internally. Until now, everything has been given. Now something is offered, and an offer, unlike a gift, asks for response. This is where the story slows again, because Scripture wants the listener to notice that the decision is already forming long before any action takes place. God does not rush this moment. There is no pressure, no raised voice, no urgency imposed from above. Presence remains, but control does not. Freedom is real here. Quiet, respectful, and heavy. Adam is allowed to think, to imagine, to wonder what lies beyond the limits he has never felt constrained by before. The tension is not rebellion yet. It is curiosity paired with independence. What makes this decision irreversible is not the act itself, but the shift that happens inside. Trust, once effortless, now shares space with evaluation. Dependence, once natural, now competes with self-direction. The world has not changed yet, but Adam has begun to stand differently within it. Awareness has entered, and awareness cannot be undone. This is not disobedience exploding into existence. It is a slow internal turn, a moment where freedom stretches just far enough to test the bond that held everything together. Nothing has shattered yet. No line has visibly been crossed, but something has already moved out of alignment. And once alignment shifts, even silently, returning to the exact same place is no longer possible. Loss without collapse. Nothing dramatic follows the decision. No sky darkens, no ground splits open. The world continues to look the same, and that is what makes the change so unsettling. Adam still stands where he stood before. The air still moves, the garden still breathes, but the way he experiences it has altered, and that alteration settles in gently, almost unnoticed at first. What arrives is not punishment in the way stories often expect it. It is distance. Not physical distance, but internal. The ease that once filled every moment no longer rests as deeply. Awareness begins to press where innocence once carried the weight. Adam does not collapse under guilt. He simply notices himself. And in noticing himself, he becomes aware of exposure, of being seen in a way that now feels unfamiliar. Silence changes its texture. Before, it was comfort. Now it carries tension. Not because God has withdrawn, but because Adam's perception has shifted. Presence is still there, but it is no longer effortless to remain within it. The consequence unfolds as realization. Something once shared without thought now requires attention. Relationship has not ended, but it has changed. This is how consequence enters the story, not with destruction, but with adjustment. Adam does not lose everything in an instant. He loses ease. He loses unself-conscious belonging. The world no longer feels automatic. Meaning must now be held, not assumed. And that shift, quiet as it is, reshapes everything that follows. There is no terror yet, only discomfort. No exile yet, only awareness. The weight of choice settles in slowly, teaching its lesson without words. This is the kind of consequence that does not frighten, it unsettles. It invites reflection rather than panic. And it makes clear that something precious has been altered, even though nothing appears broken. The story does not rush past this moment. It stays here, long enough for the listener to feel how quietly everything has changed. The pattern we still repeat. This moment refuses to stay in the past. It continues to surface, not because it is ancient, but because it is familiar. Long after the garden fades from view, the pattern remains. People still stand inside moments that feel safe, settled, unquestioned, until a subtle shift occurs and awareness enters where innocence once lived. And just like Adam, they often do not notice the turning point until after it has passed. What makes this story enduring is not the act itself, but the experience of realizing that something once effortless now requires intention. The loss here is not only spiritual, it is human. It is the moment when trust becomes something we think about instead of something we simply live inside. When belonging becomes something we manage instead of something we assume. That transition repeats itself quietly in lives that have never heard this story told. People still cross invisible lines without recognizing them, not out of rebellion but out of curiosity, independence, or the desire to understand more than they were asked to. And when awareness arrives, it does not announce itself as failure. It arrives as distance, as tension in places that once felt easy, as the unsettling realization that perception has changed, even if circumstances have not. This is why the story continues to resonate. It mirrors the internal movements people experience when relationships shift, when trust becomes complicated, when innocence gives way to self-awareness. The garden may be ancient, but the feeling is modern. The discomfort is recognizable. The quiet realization that something cannot be returned to exactly as it was echoes across generations. The power of this moment is that it does not accuse, it reflects. It invites the listener to recognize their own story without being told what to conclude. Somewhere between comfort and consequence, many people recognize themselves here. Not as villains, but as humans learning, too late sometimes, that certain states of being can only exist before awareness enters. And that recognition is why this story continues to speak, softly, persistently, into lives that never expected to hear their own reflection in an ancient silence. Where do you stand now? The story does not close with resolution. It slows instead, returning to the quiet that framed its beginning. Not the same quiet, but a deeper one. A silence shaped by awareness. Nothing is fully explained. Nothing is neatly restored. What remains is a pause that Scripture leaves open on purpose, as if the final movement is not meant to be read, but lived. Adam does not receive a speech here. He receives space. Space to stand with what has changed, space to feel the distance that now exists where ease once lived. Faith, in this moment, is not certainty. It is staying present without clarity. It is learning to remain when innocence is gone and understanding is incomplete. This is where the story gently releases the listener, not with instruction, but with reflection. Because the question that rises here is not historical, it is personal. Where do you stand when awareness enters? When trust is no longer effortless? When belonging asks for intention rather than assumption? These stories are shared for those who value depth over speed, silence over noise, and meaning that unfolds slowly. If this kind of long-form, unhurried biblical storytelling speaks to you, you are invited to subscribe, not as a habit, but as a choice to continue exploring faith with patience and honesty. The narrative ends without closing the circle. No final answer, no complete return, only a quiet awareness that once certain thresholds are crossed, we do not go back. We move forward differently. And in that stillness, a question lingers, not asking what Adam did, but asking where you stand now.